Thank you, sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start the meeting at 1 o'clock. Roll call. Okay, hold on. We'll call, make sure we have quorum.
Hi. Oh, yeah, we'll make it.
We have quorum. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Oh, yeah.
I'll declare a conflict of interest for number 8.
8, so noted. Thank you. The approval of the minutes. I'll leave the motion. Sorry. No, that's good. That's good. Adoption of the agenda. I skipped one line. It resolved that the agenda for the July 13th, 2026 Board of Directors meeting be adopted as presented. I need someone to move that. Yeah. There you do. All in favor? Carried. Okay, item 1, approval of the minutes. Any discussion on the minutes? I will read the motion. Resolved that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held May 11, 2026 be received and approved as printed. I need someone to move it. All seconded. Bev. All in favor? Carried. Receipt of the draft minutes. Okay, that was me. That's consent. Okay, item number 2. Introduction to the MVCA Executive Director, Kim Pickington. Janet.
Yes, I have a few opening words and then Kim will say a few words. As many of you know, I am the authority's board representative on the Mississippi Valley Conservation Foundation. It's one of 4 board members. And we recently hired a new executive director named Kim Pilkington. And MVCF, it does a lot for your municipalities. It supports them through donations and grants that help fund Category 3 stewardship and education programs carried out by the authority. And examples would be the Osprey Nest Tower at the Conservation Authority in Canada, and the Burton Boardwalk replacement are just some examples that have been partially funded through donations. In October 2025, the foundation did a strategic plan, and we had four goals come out of that. One was to look at rebranding ourselves to distinguish ourselves from the authority because they're often confused. The second was to hire an executive director. So we have done that, and that was to help grow the foundation and allow it to make a difference in the 2 watersheds, more of a difference. We had initiated a flagship project with relaunching the foundation and determine whether the foundation needs to fund others beyond MVCA, particularly in light of amalgamation. So why we hired a part-time, and she is part-time, unfortunately just not yet full-time, why we hired a part-time executive director, it was clear to the board that our efforts and the limited time available by busy MVCA staff and the board itself were just not sufficient to grow donations, grants, or other income. And we needed a professional fundraiser. None of us are fundraisers. We need someone to raise the profile of the foundation and to wield all the tools and techniques and personal relationships needed to build the foundation into an organization with impact. We interviewed 5 very good candidates out of a pool of, I think they had, 12, 13, 14 applications. And we selected Kim for her experience and passion in helping people. And I'll just conclude before Kim speaks is that the foundation, the reason I'm raising this is the foundation needs your help to make connections in your communities. And when Kim and the board, we have a huge challenge to make the foundation viable as a standalone organization in 1 year. And please make the time to speak to her when she contacts you to learn more about your municipality. And the second thing is that when we can tell a compelling new story that donors want to support, we will be seeking to grow the board. And we will return to this board to tell you about our story. And we will ask you to think about the people in your communities who might be interested in joining our new revitalized initiative. So with that, I'm glad Kim has come on board. So this is Kim Koken, and she's going to say a few words.
I'm very honored to be part of this the group now in the family. I've been fundraising for 25 years with many different organizations and as a consultant. Why this is special, I live 6 kilometers away from Purdon with all those beautiful baby slipper orchids. So I'm going to be able to help in my own backyard. So that's very important to me. If I know you because you were counselor, you were the counselor for my mom who lived in Wellings. Beautiful time there. Previously lived in Ottawa. So I need to sponge very much. I'm not a biologist, I'm fundraising. So I need to sponge from each of you. So when you see my email or phone call, please come. Don't block my number. I need to know what's important, why this authority is important to you personally, your constituents. Where's some gaps? Where's some opportunities? So I need to have those conversations, and I really look forward to all of them. And if you happen to see bags of money, send them my way. Thank you, everybody.
Are there any comments or questions for Kim or Janet regarding the foundation? Very good.
Just a comment, congratulations for your action. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I was hit and miss fundraising initiatives. It became obvious that that board did need some work. And thank you for recognizing you some. And perhaps with partnerships, it can be much more effective in its environmental goal.
Absolutely, partnerships is the way that we're going to be looking at it. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Janet, for your work, and welcome, foundation. Item 3, employee presentation, Mississippi Lake Association tour, Catherine and Keller. Ms. Keller.
Catherine is unable to be here today, so I'm just flying solo, which is unfortunate because she did the bulk of the work to make this tour happen. But I was there, so I can help fill you guys in. So to introduce myself, I'm Kelly Stiles. I'm a staff biologist. I've met quite a lot of you at various tours and other meetings, but for those who don't know my face, that's my name. Back at the start of June, actually back in May, the Mississippi Lakes Association reached out to the engineering department asking for a tour of the watershed. They wanted to better understand water flows and how everything upstream of them affects their lake, and that includes the decisions we make as managers of that water. And so that's why they reached out to engineering. They had previously reached out last year and we were unable to accommodate last year, so they tried again this year. At which point Bureau and Catherine said, yes, we can do this, we'll make it work. And for June 3rd, it was a beautiful, hot, sunny Wednesday. Us and 19 members of the Mississippi Lakes Association group went on a tour of the watershed. And thankfully, the group was limited based on some of their membership. It was targeted invites on their part to try and keep the numbers manageable. And the busing was provided by the lady in orange. She happens to work for the bus company and is on the Mississippi Lakes executive. And so that was a really nice tie-in to make the busing available and to get everybody in one vehicle. Because of course, as we're going down the road, we're able to talk about what we're seeing. They're able to ask questions. Catherine and I are able to answer them. So it was a lovely day. So we started by visiting some of our dams, where Catherine presented on our monitoring equipment, how the stack gauges work at dams, how dams are operated, how that equipment she's pointing at the solar panel and gauges and whatnot communicate live readings back to our office and our website. She talked about how that applies to the whole watershed and thus then to Mississippi Lake as the receiving body. Afterwards, after Lanark Dam, we went up to the High Falls Dam, upstream of Dalhousie Lake, which is a super treat because it really gave them a scale of how high High Falls is, how much water that dam is holding back, and what that means for the downstream receivers such as Dalhousie and Mississippi Lake. And thankfully, while we were there, Catherine was able to arrange that OPG staff were on site. So they gave us a personalized tour inside the building instead of just seeing the dam and what we do. So they got to expand their knowledge about more than just the way we operate the watershed. It's how we have to partner with organizations like OPG and how they operate a run of the river dam system. And so this is inside the turbine building at the bottom of the dam, as well as all of us standing on top of the dam upstream. And so they're incredibly thankful and mesmerized by what they're seeing in these buildings from the 1920s. Then for lunch, we stopped at Purdon Conservation Area, which is where I was put to task to give everyone a nature walk of the boardwalk area. Fortunately, June 3rd was a little bit too early to see the pink lady slippers in bloom, but we did see them growing. And I was able to point out some of the other special species that we have on site, such as the pitcher plants and other bog-related environments. And then we continue the discussion about how we monitor and protect and how we watch out for invasive species, how our stewardship team works with landowners, and so on throughout the day. These conversations were able to come up organically because of the time that we were spending together. And lastly, we finished up at Carleton Place Dam to close the loop on what's downstream of their lake and how that dam also affects what they see and experience on their waterfront. It led to oodles and abundant positive feedback from the membership. They did say, you know, I bet there's other people from our association who would love to come and meet you people, talk to you, learn about these things directly instead of secondhand through one of their newsletters or whatnot. And Catherine has also let me know Dalhousie Lake has also reached out with interest for a tour. And so considering our history with previously offering tours on an as-need basis, which hasn't happened for a number of years, but as there is turnover at our lake associations, that knowledge doesn't necessarily get passed on to the subsequent board of directors or lake stewards or whatnot. And so again, those questions come up of who are you? What do you do? And how do you affect my day-to-day? Especially when it's spring flood season or summer drought season. People like to share blame or point blame where they don't understand. And so by having these opportunities to really explain to them the nuances of what we do, how we keep an eye on the watershed and how we react to what we're seeing was really helpful. And they said it's so beneficial to have this time with you to be able to ask questions and learn with their boots on the ground. Because it's one thing to point at the big map, it's another thing to stand at the top of High Falls Dam and really see the difference in elevation that's happening there. And so amongst the managers, after that tour, we sort of discussed that we may be able to have capacity to offer tours again, but not as a regular thing. It might be more of a every 2 years as demand request. And then it would feed into our fee schedule for our outreach procedures. And so it's still sort of in its inventory, and we will have to develop this lot as we move forward. And as, like I said, as demand calls us up, we will have to react to it. But I found it, being a person there, a great way to build and maintain that relationship with these people who are waterfront owners. So if there's any questions.
Thank you, thank you, Kelly.
No problem.
Any questions or comments for Kelly? I do.
It's just, when you say fee structure, we charge them for the tour?
We did not charge them for this tour, and this is provided for free because the person was on the executive, talked to her boss and said, can I borrow a bus for the day? And they did. But considering we do have a fee structure for our education department, and special one-off events could be conceived as needing special planning and staff effort, that's why it's not been enacted yet, but it's being discussed because it does take special staff time away from our regular duties. But outreach is an important duty as well, and so that's why it needs discussion.
I think these lake associations that look on that is that they're partners with Mississippi Valley, and to charge them, I really don't think would go over very well whatsoever as far as creating a good neighbors type thing. So anyway, I just put that out there. For the money gained, I don't think that would be worth well.
Thank you, Richard. Mary Lou, and Paul.
Yeah, first of all, that wasn't where I was going to start. I will start. I think that the PR value in it far outweighs the advantage of trying to recoup 2 days worth of salary. I also think that having done it for the Mississippi Lakes Association, you already have your skeleton. You have the system, so it will take less time as it gets more set. It would always need some tweaking.
It will need some
For
personalization
individuals.
for the audience.
But I think that the public relations value is so high. That it should be found, the money should be found elsewhere, or it's a place where the foundation might be able to provide funding for X number of tours. Anyway, I do think it's very valuable, and I
agree.
I was gonna ask though, what is the mandate of the Mississippi Lakes Association?
I don't have that in front of me, but they represent the landowners of the lake, which is hundreds of properties. And so they do have a membership where people pay a fee to become a member and get those resources of the membership, such as newsletters, access to events. They run a site with information about the lake. They do their own monitoring program. There's a few other things that we work in partnership on as well, but I don't have their mandate offhand.
Okay, but you really answered my question without answering it. It's not simply a political lobbying group. It's people who are interested in their own environment.
Yeah.
And are willing to volunteer
Oh, yes.
to help monitor that, similar to the White Lakes Association,
Yep, definitely.
which is a very effective one.
Yeah, and they're very active and very engaged.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Just their comments, they also put out mark all the rocks. That's where they came from originally, was to mark the lake for areas of danger for traffic. And they also, so they put those out, and they have I think the road associations, Richard, are part of the association.
Yeah, a lot of lake associations did start as road associations because they're non-municipal roads, and so they have to agree on how and when to maintain them. But then they realized that they all share a shoreline and should sort of coordinate understanding the shoreline as well.
So they do have
This
some
one's the other way
political,
around.
they do have some political input to the councils
Yes,
that are around.
they do definitely have some feedback and pressure when it comes to environmental concerns to the various municipalities. The Mississippi Lake in particular has 4 municipalities. So you
And
might
yes.
see their faces. Some of these people around our table more so than others.
The other thing I was gonna mention was that given where the Conservation Authority is going and how there'll be limited representation from the local municipalities, this may be something that you keep in the back of your mind to offer to the various councils around. Because if we're down to only having 2 representatives and they're coming from the county, there's gonna be a lot of things that may happen where a municipality said, well, it's those damn conservation authorities, blah, 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 they did this, without the understanding of what's going on. So you may want to offer something after the election, next spring or whatever, to the local councils, for say a member from each council to go along, so that if something came up at a council meeting, that member could say, hey, wait a second, I was on a tour, that's not the way it works.
Which is,
Okay, just
Again, great,
because
yeah.
it is gonna be weird when it's, the county's doing it.
okay, Paul, any other, Kathy?
Just a thought, maybe their fees could go to the foundation. If they were charged something, instead of it saying going here, it would go to the foundation, and then the foundation can support other good things that they might like. I mean, I'm a member of the Lake Association, and otherwise we spend $35,000 on fireworks. I don't have a big problem with having a lake association have to pay a fee. So, but that's my lake, but I would say that maybe they would think nicely of it if it were going to the foundation.
Richard, you got?
Yeah, this lake they don't have any money. They don't do fireworks, they don't do any community things, they put out the buoys. They started out putting out marking the lake for boat traffic and weed control. They had a weed harvester actually to do it. And now they're sampling water and they're giving the results to us. And I just, anyways, it's no big deal either way, but as far as PR and hard feelings, I would really think for this one, and them doing so much work for us.
I hear that, but we have a fee that we pay our lake association, that's
So
why
does
it's so
that.
much money.
$25.
Yeah, maybe they need to raise it, ours is $100.
You should come there and meet, tell them.
Well, they're cottage owners, like they don't $100 to pay for the lake association. Our lake association does all the water testing too, right? So then we know that our water's safe and, you know, their septic systems are leaching into the lake, right? The cottage owners, so like, you feel like you should spend some money, have somebody helping keep your lake clean. That's my perspective.
Kelly,
I think that's $35,000. That's one.
It's big fire.
Fireworks.
It is.
Let me know.
Sally,
Go back.
So, as you know, under the new regulatory environment, we are cost conscious, right? And cost recovery is a theme that we're constantly grappling with. So coincidentally, Gord Montenay, who some of you will remember when he was with the authority, he used to be the operator all the dams. And took the opportunity when he was in to ask him about, you know, these board tours, or not board tours, pardon me, community tours, tell me about them. And he said, well, we used to get so many complaints that, you know, he decided he needed to meet with the lake associations and quite frankly educate them, right? And so I said, well, how long did you do them for? And he said, well, until the complaints started to decline, you know, and he said, once the complaints stopped, then basically, you know, it became a much more ad hoc kind of thing. Similarly, Kelly's going to an AGM, I'm going to an AGM. Those sorts of things are pretty standard fare, but to organize a tour, much like the tour you guys participated in last month, they do take a lot of time and effort. And if we're on the hook for the vehicle rentals, that can be very, very costly. So the other thing about charging a fee is people show up. Because if you offer it for free, people will enroll, you get filled up, and then you end up with a half full bus. So these are the sorts of things that we're trying to grapple with. And Stacy is planning to come back at the next board meeting with 2027 rates, so that because we're already taking bookings into next year at the mill, for example. So I propose that when we come back with the updated fee structure, we come together, bring also a bit of a business case on how we might manage these, look at the full costs going forward, and then you can contemplate at that time whether or not that's a fee we want to add into the 2027 fee schedule. So if that works for folks. We'll work away on that and come back to you in September.
great, thank you, Sally. Any final comments or questions? Kelly, I think this is a great idea. I know there's few lake associations in North Frontenac that would love to do a tour like this.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking possibly you could combine a few lake associations, because some of our lakes are small, but
And they're in a similar geography.
correct. Yeah, all right, thank you.
Very great. Thank you guys so much.
Item number 4, GM update, Sally.
Okay, so just sticking to some highlights, the WECI funding, unfortunately, we didn't get nearly the funding we were looking for. Although tactically, as we had done in the previous year, where we put in for Widow Lake and Lanark Dam PSRs, dam safety reviews, we put in for Widow Lake and Bennett Lake this year. And we only got funding, we didn't get funding for either last time, and we didn't get funding for either this time. But last time, we were able to pool the funds that we had set aside to do 2 and at least accomplish 1. And that's what we're planning to do this year. So whereas Lanark Dam was the priority the last time we went down this road, and we were able to piece together the monies to get it done this year, we're piecing the money together to get the Widow Lake Dam TSR done. The Kashwakimak Lake Dam, it didn't get nearly the money we were looking for, but at least we got some. And you'll hear a bit about this when Stacey gives you her financial update and the outlook for this year, because we're having to move some monies around to keep moving on this. A couple of other things, we have been doing a lot of outreach. So in addition to what President Kelly just gave, and I mentioned a couple of AGMs, I think I may have mentioned at the last meeting that Kathy Curry-Roy and I were meeting with our MP from the Stittsville, Canada area, Bruce Fanjoy, and that meeting went very, very well. And coincidentally, I was looking in a subsequent community newspaper article, and he finished off by saying, yes, we have to continue funding for floodplain mapping and dam improvement. Like, hooray, he heard us. It was very rewarding to read those words in my local paper. Next thing, we were successful in getting a terrific grant from Invasive Species Action Fund for the invasive Phragmites control. And so we've begun mapping of our jurisdiction that will be able to have crews subsequently go in and do targeted species removal on the Phragmites. They're focusing on roadways and water courses, and they're using new technology that we're hoping will learn how to apply for other applications of our work. And then a couple other things. Another good news thing was that Alto did actually listen to and read our comments, because it's reflected in their what we've heard report. So that was, at least they heard us, and it's documented that they referenced some of the things that we raised. The last thing that I wanted to just say is that and I think I say this in my subsequent report, the timelines, we got a ministerial directive, the timelines we're doing for our budget are fine. They fully comply, so there's no new issues raised associated with them. So we're good.
Any questions for Sally? Richard?
What's the new technology?
Oh, Kelly left the room. Okay, so to my understanding, if anybody else in this room, staff knows, to my understanding, it's sort of, I'm gonna say, like with the street view, it's some sort of technology that can view it as they're driving along and can do identification and geolocation at the same time. That's my understanding.
Sorry, so I can do what when you drive along?
Like Google Maps, they have the camera.
Oh, this is just for mapping the technology.
Yes, yes,
Oh, okay, I thought it was for removal.
yeah. Oh, or they're using.
Until we just,
Okay.
until we figure out how to get rid of it, it really.
Well, you gotta identify it and then go in, but yes, it's because what they're trying to do, I think, Richard, is a prioritization. Where are the biggest locations, et cetera, right? Or maybe there's smaller ones that they can get on top of it before it gets out of hand. So
I'd like to know how they're gonna do that.
I don't know. Is it not drive by with the drone?
I think it's drive by car, sayings.
Yeah, it's, is I'm on the working group,
Yeah,
Oh, poor Janet.
and I was just making sure there wasn't something new I didn't know about, because but essentially you download an app, which is a mapping app.
Oh, it's the app.
It's the app.
Oh.
And then you have the app, you fill in how big it is,
Yeah.
like it takes your coordinates, you fill in how big this patch is, you take some photos so that they know what it is. And then it automatically gets loaded in. There's nothing like the Google vehicle. I was all excited. But you have to get out of the car, basically, you would probably get out of the car and do all this. And then the only other thing is that the intent is then to look at the prioritization for which areas you want to then target. So this year is the mapping, like there's a multi-stage process, Richard.
Yeah.
So this is the mapping part, and then you prioritize the areas that you have to address.
okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wondered what the technology to get rid of it is.
So I'm excited.
Sorry, Janet.
But they are using drone technology in North Frontenac to map the areas.
They are some way, yeah, apparently there's some issues with drones. It has to be big enough, and it has to, they kind of have to know it's already there, but that's to make sure that they're really mapping Phragmites.
Right.
But then it gives them the size of these large areas that are just totally like, honestly, Canada South and Canada North, there's just gigantic amounts of Phragmites and like the Carte River. It's just awful. Right? It needs to be mapped there. So yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sally regarding your report? Seeing that, we'll move on to item 5, Carte River tributaries, regulatory flood and erosion hazard mapping study Bureau.
Right, thanks, Alex. So Carp River tributaries is our latest floodplain projects, basically having water approval. So what we see here is the Carp River watershed outlined in green on that map. As you might remember, we mapped the river, Carp River, 2 years ago in 2024. And while all the upper Carp River tributaries, Spool Creek, Creedmoor Creek, Huntley Creek, this is the Statesville, Atlanta area of the watershed from already mapped between 2015 and 2020. The remaining tributaries in the lower watershed basically remain unmapped, and the risk of flooding and erosion not known. So in this study, we focused on those key lower tributaries, including the one that flows into the river in the village of Cleanburn. And then we have those three tributaries next to each other, which are just referred to tributary A, B, and C, and these names are from the City of Ottawa Stream Watch program, so they are basically named. So with these four tributaries were previously identified as priority mapping area because of the ongoing residential and industrial development, especially in the area of Carp airports. We have the Diamond View, which states residential development. We have West Capital Air Park area. I don't know, Ben, did I miss anything else? So this is basically, there's a lot of development happening right now in that place. So definitely regulatory mapping will be very handy to support development. So individually, we're looking at some very small projects, but when we lump it all together, we actually ended up mapping over 20 kilometers of water courses. So it's pretty still a decent sized project. And we looked at the flooding hazard. We also looked at erosion. And this project was completed again in collaboration with and financial support from the City of Ottawa. So with this project, we also reached another important milestone in our hazard mapping implementation program. And the milestone is that we actually mapped all the water courses that were previously identified for hazard mapping. You can see the table. I don't know if you can read it, but it's basically 17 flood mapping projects that MVCA tackled in the last 10, 15 years. And so unless there is a new development area identified in the official plan, from now on we will be basically just remapping and updating existing maps. There is nothing really on the list that still needs to be mapped going forward. This is the typical approach that we follow in all our floodplain mapping projects, delineate the maps, then prepare the documentation, adopt the mapping for regulation, and then share the maps and reports with the municipality. We again with this project follow all the provincial and federal technical guidelines, and also all the deliverables that we produce the subject to an independent technical review process. And this was arranged by the City of Ottawa. So in the technical report that has been that you can was part of the package, there's an appendix in the report that lists all the review comments and how the engineering team addressed these comments in the final set. The methodology, again, the MVCA collected topographic data for all four tributaries. We surveyed all water crossings, produced all data standard project, and use the latest modeling tools. So we always try to use the best data and technology that's available for the time stage. And again, we spend a lot of time validating and collecting data in the field for each tributary. We established a monitoring station which basically reported continuously water levels During flood events, we went into the field with equipment and we measured stream rates. We surveyed the flood elevations and all this information that used to validate basically our models and maps. So that gives us, additional confidence at the end of the day. We produced 12 maps for the 4 tributaries in 1 to 2,000 scale. We used the latest rate, which is 2024. And once we have the draft mapping, we could then start analyzing and looking at the impacts. And that's summarizing the table. So we see that in total we had 93 affected properties, but only 30 big buildings on these properties. But these are all buildings, including garages, sheds, whatever. What the important numbers is properties without safe access, 0. Now the residence is permanent seasonal 16 in regulation limit, but none in the floodplain. And no residences had unsafe access, so all basically had safe access. So we see that there's some very good numbers, and we had only 3 water crossings without safe access. And all these 3 are basically just a local private farm crossings. So all the public roads are not affected by the flooding. Now, with respect to public consultation, so the notice was published in local newspaper on our website, social media. We again mailed this notice to all the affected landowners. Draft maps were posted on our website for review and comment, and we responded to all these inquiries, all these comments we received during this public consultation process. And then in March, we held the open house in the village of Car. At the open house, we had about 20 people attending, which is a good attendance for the size of this project. And again, we recorded all the comments, inquiries that we received, and addressed them in the following weeks. So following the approval, again, the standard process will be finalizing the maps, posting them on our website. Then we will be also packaging all these deliverables and sending them to our partners of the city of Ottawa for the implementation in the planning documents, and then we'll be basically using the maps in the regulation to get development in the watershed. So that's my last slide. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Earl. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Resolved that the Board of Directors, 1, adopt the report, Park River Tributaries Regulatory Flood and Erosion Hazard Mapping Study, dated June 2026, and the associated GIS-based regulation limit lines and floodplain maps as the delineation of the areas along the Park River tributaries A, B, and C in the Kinborn Drain that are susceptible to erosion and flooding during regional flood standard defined in Schedule 1 of the Ontario Regulation 41/24, and 2, direct the report map and regulation limit to be used in the implementation of Ontario Regulation 41/24. I need someone to do that.
Clark County, Robert.
The clerk have a question already.
Oh, he might want to move it. Sorry, it's just that he's online.
Oh,
I thought I heard my name there. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to move that.
okay, thank you. I need someone to second it. Mary Lou, put your hand up. All in favor? Carried. Item 6, Petromac dam replacement update in camera. Resolved that the Board of Directors move to an in-camera session to discuss of proposed pending acquisition or deposition of land by the authority. And further resolved, Sally McIntyre, Yuri Konderlich, Scott Lernick, and Kelly Horton remain in the room for discussions, and the remaining MVCA staff and all guests leave the room. I need someone to move that. Beth. Seconder, Paul. All in favor?
Yeah.
Carried. Move on to item number 7, amalgamation update, Sally McIntyre.
Okay, so we still haven't found out who the new project executive is going to be, but I think it's going to be pretty soon. Possibly by the end of this week. And just to remind you, whoever the project executive is to be the future CAO of the amalgamated region. We are expecting the playbooks that are to inform the the transition committee work. The end of this month, I did find out at that information session that they're going to be tailored. So there is going to be some differences in what the transition groups are doing based upon local situations. I imagine they'll be 90% the same and 10% differences. But it was good to hear that they are to do some sort of tailoring. The other 3 CAs have appointed who their reps are going to be. They weren't always the chair. The Raisin region has appointed their vice chair, who's from Stormont, South Stormont Township. Rideau Valley appointed their chair, and then South Nation appointed a board member from the city of Ottawa, because they wanted to make sure that a board member from the city of Ottawa was on the transition. And that's it. No other new information on the amalgamation.
Any questions for Solomon during that? So we have not received any dates of it starting the transitions, assuming you're waiting for the director CEO to be hired first.
I think so.
Okay. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been going to a lot of Lake Association meetings in North Roanoke. I'm not too happy that this whole amalgamation thing, as you can imagine. Okay, nothing to note there. So item number 8, Beth, are you going to leave? Yeah. Okay. And Scott, you have a presentation? Bill Cantel Museum Collections and Operations.
So in at the February policy and planning meeting, staff presented an update on the Milton Museum collections and operations, as well as the progress made by the working group at that point. After discussions, it became evident that we needed a transparent, competitive, and defensible process in order to ensure the transfer of the collection to a possible new owner. So as a result, staff initiated a formal RFP process. So we did put out an RUI on February 24th and received feedback from 5 organizations. We called a special board meeting, as I'm sure a lot of you remember, on March 30th, where the board approved the scope of the RFP and also directed members of the working group with a potential conflict to step down. And then shortly after, the RFP was issued on April 17th. These are the 4 submissions that we got back. So Canada's first basketball court, or the world's oldest basketball court, is out east. The Canadian Museum of History, the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum, and the new one that didn't come in the RUI process but came in the RFP was the Municipality of Mississippi Mills. So the working group, between the working group feedback and staff, we came up with these 13 it's evaluation criteria that helped us steer through the process of evaluating each proposal. And it guards against, again, so it's protecting the collections and the legacies, supporting local heritage and economic development, and compliance and risk management were the 3 main categories, and they're broken down to smaller topics within those categories. And that's kind of how we help evaluate the discussion between the working group and also staff in terms of what came in as proposals. So the world's oldest basketball court, I'll give you a little background on each kind of proponent, and then some of the feedback that came back from the working group and also from the staff side. So it's a not-for-profit. It's 13 years in operation. They do have an application in process to become a registered charity. They were only interested in the Naismith collection, but they were open to sharing the Naismith collection with other organizations. So they're located in New Brunswick. And they have plans to showcase the Naismith collection in a facility that celebrates Canadian basketball. So they actually included a concept drawing of a facility that they're looking to build up there. It's a really great idea. The issue was that the facility does not exist today. So some of the feedback that came back again from the working group and from staff that we pointed out, so it would mean splitting up the collections. It would lead to an outstanding issue for the management of the Mackenzie collection. It called for the relocation of the Naismith items, obviously heading out east. The proposed facility is not yet constructed, which may or may not come to fruition, which also means they don't have a proper storage facility for the artifacts. They do have genuine interest in preservation and promotion of the Naismith story and to promote Canadian basketball, which personally I think as a country we don't do enough of. So that was a definitely good part to see, and this is going to be a reoccurring topic as we go through the presentations. There's a really good partnership opportunity out there, for future of that collection. Second is the Canadian Museum of History, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Located in Gatineau, it's the largest collector of sport history in the country. They were interested in 14 Mackenzie objects and 77 Naismith objects. They did plan to move the items off-site. They would integrate the items into larger exhibits and unlikely to profile the men individually or tell their joint story. So the feedback was that obviously excellent expertise in the museum side of things, the ability to care for the artifacts. They would split up essentially both collections, relocate some of the items, and at least the uncertainty of what would happen to the rest of the items that were left in the collection. Corporately and financially stable in terms of a museum. I mean, we have seen some recent budget cuts, which again plays into a bit of the uncertainty. And again, as we talked about, it's another good avenue for a partnership for the museum. We have our friends at the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum, located in Almont, 40 plus years in operation. They're interested in both elements, all the elements sort of both collections, would retain the items on site at the Mill Tail. They did propose a January 2027 transfer. I mean, they weren't firm on it, but that is the one that they put forward, which is a bit aggressive. The short-term goal would be to oversee Milliken Tail Museum in the current state, and then they did have future goals towards ownership of the museum and the gatehouse structures. And then also they did speak to trying to help consolidate all of the Mississippi Mills museums into kind of one organization. So again, the feedback for them, it did allow for both collections to remain on the Milliken Tail grounds. There is a concern about staffing and the financial burden of operating two sites. 2020 ship ownership, as we talked about, was a bit unrealistic. They do have a very strong track record of securing grants and donations. Although I did read yesterday that they're recently actually going to admission. I think they're charging $5 at the door, which if I read the email correctly, I think it just started. They do have proven staff expertise. They have a fairly strong track record in staff and a good roster of staff. It's a step towards bringing all of the Mississippi Mills museums under one umbrella. But the one thing, again, that was pointed out, that the goal to own the museum and the gatehouse buildings was out of the scope of the RFP. It was never brought to the board for discussion. Then we have the municipality of Mississippi Mills. So they're interested in all the elements of both collections, again, retaining it on the Milliken Tail site. So the local municipality is obviously a membership on the MVCA board as part of the MVCA model. They proposed a January 2028 transfer. It's accompanied by various letters of support from the local community. They proposed to draw on expertise from the Northland Art Museum, and also they have curatorial experience with the library there. So some of the feedback allows, again, for the collection to remain on site, financially stable at the organizational level. Any long-term plans would be subject to future municipal councils. Again, another step towards bringing the museums under the same umbrella. They did have a lack of reference to an advisory board or a board in general, which is a requirement for funding. So in terms of which I'll speak to later, our CMOG application form needs to go through a board of directors. But it is demonstrating commitment to the preservation of both collections, which is obviously an important step. So with that, our recommendation is the municipality of Mississippi Mills. So it allows for full collection to remain locally at the Milliken Tail, which hearing from the local community was very important to them. A demonstration commitment to preserve both collections. They are a proven partner of MVCA. Proponent most likely to have a long-term predictable funding model. Allows for possible involvement of other parties. We've spoken about the involvement of the other museums, but there are also, so the Lanark County Arts and Heritage Committee, which goes across obviously all of Lanark, could be another door to open through this avenue. They had numerous letters of support from the community, including the County of Lanark, Town of Carleton Place, Township of Beckwith, which again leads to the community support behind Mississippi Mills being the successful proponent here. And as we talked about, it's a step towards cohesion amongst three museums. So we feel that the municipality of Mississippi Mills is our preferred proponent for the RFP process.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, didn't mean it. So I'll just take you through quickly. Sorry, I'll take you through quickly. So it's just a bit of a timeline. I mean, we passed some of it, obviously, July 13th at the board meeting. We had an extension for our CMOG application to July 30th. We submitted everything else for the CMOG application, including the draft plan. So assuming the draft plan is approved by the board, we will then submit that. That will close off our CMOG application. Then we go from August 2026 to December 2027. So continue museum operations. We still have the museum to operate. We want to leave it in the best possible state to be able to pass it along. And then we're going to get into preparing the transfer and lease agreements. And we know, obviously, to the legal processes we've gone through, there's probably going to be a fair amount of work on that side of things to be able to tighten everything up. And then hopefully in January of 2028, we'll be looking at the official transfer of ownership to Mississippi.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Any comments or questions for Scott?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
That's why I say one comment. I know this has been a lot of work for Scott. He's done a great job over the last year. So thank you for that. It's funny, last year I was up in Thunder Bay and Sally was on vacation. When I came out of my fishing trip, I had about 10 voice messages all from Scott regarding this. Scott, I'm going to Thunder Bay next week, fishing trip again. I don't want any voice messages.
I don't want to call you.
All right. I'll read the motion. That the board of directors direct staff to commence negotiations with the municipality of Mississippi Mills to assume ownership of the museum collections and operations of the Mill of Quintel Museum in accordance with the RFP and the municipality submission. Richard moved it. I need someone to stay that, second it. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Number 9. You can.
I know he's not in the room, but I do think that all of the work that Bev has done should be recognized by the board.
Maybe we can talk.
And I mean, I know Jeff is involved too, and Scott, I know it's been a huge effort, but I mean, we just wanted to, actually, Bev, I was just saying thank you for all your work on Mississippi Mills. Sorry, no one can tell things. Well, now Mississippi Mills Museum.
You don't need to thank me. I need to thank you guys for understanding and putting up with me bitching about all the stuff. And I know that all of council, I've talked to Mary Laura even yesterday about it. She was on her way to a cottage for me. She did call me to say, please let everyone know that we would really appreciate having this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you for all your work on that.
On to number 9, the Quintel Museum Strategic Plan update. Stop.
So I've spoken to briefly before. So as part of the community museum's operating agreement, each year eligible participants are required to submit material for evaluation to ensure they continue to meet the standards for community museums in Ontario. This is all administered by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Gaming. So this year's special project was the updated strategic plan. So it was last updated in 2019. So the requirements of the plan were a mission, vision, and mandate related to the museum, summary of the planning process, priorities and goals, and then hopefully obtainable action items and a plan to achieve those goals. So as part of our process, we did engage with a third-party evaluation of the 2019 strat plan. Fozzie Moore was a retired civil servant that donated her time to be able to evaluate the previous plan and pointed out some of the areas that we could really concentrate on the new plan, and not only for our plan, but also for any new organization that would take over the ownership of the collection and operation of the museum moving forward. We also incorporated some of the aspects of the 2025 Canadian Conservation Institute report. So we had CCI come in last year to do a walkthrough our facility and look at our collections and some of our the way that we are caring for the artifacts and whatnot. And we do have some small action items that will come out of that. Earlier this year, we completed building condition assessments on both the museum and the gatehouse and the education center, but it's separate from this. So we do have further backing when it comes to our 10-year capital plan. So we built out a 10-year capital plan that's further influenced from the building condition assessments. We then the draft plan to members of the Museum Advisory Committee, and we did receive some feedback. And also we sent it to Mississippi Mills and received some feedback from there as well. So our phases and goals: pre-transfer, support and facilitate the successful transfer of the collection of the museum to Mississippi Mills. Obviously, a very important goal. Display and manage the Mackenzie and Naismith exhibits in a manner that highlights their shared interests and captures the history of the property and the role of successful ownership had in the protection and management of the land, historic buildings, and museum collections. Post-transfer goals, and again, in collaboration with Mississippi Mills, ensure continued care of the museum gatehouse facilities for the safety of employees, visitors, and the collections. Ensure continued care of the conservation area grounds to ensure a safe, welcoming, and attractive destination. Promote the conservation area and museum. We're hopefully looking at planning and delivering on joint events and leverage relationship with other museums to enhance the exposure of the Milliken Tail site museum on a national and international level. So again, I keep pointing back to some of the relationships that we established through the RFP process has opened a lot of doors in this. So even people that didn't actually reply to the RFP or the REOI, there are other opportunities out there to be able to grow the portfolio of the museum and kind of get more exposure both on the national scale and the international scale. Some of the key objectives, there is a bigger list obviously in the plan itself, but some of the key objectives, so the update of the accession records. So anytime you take on items, it should come with backing of how you got the item and where it came from. Most of the Mackenzie, if not all of the Mackenzie side, is in pretty good shape. Some of the Naismith stuff is a little bit hit and miss. You need to do some work picking up some of those records. We really want to integrate the story of MVCA's involvement and as chief steward over the last 50 plus years of the museum. Fostering relationships with other facilities. Again, the big one of negotiating and facilitating the successful transfer. And we want to integrate the museum into the upcoming site master plan update. Some of the key action items. Again, so some of this is a bit of a carryover, ensuring the collection and documentation is set for transfer. There are a couple of small maintenance needs that we need to take care of in the museum building itself before we would be kind of comfortable with passing on the transfer. The good news is a lot of the heavy lifting on the capital side was done in 2023 to 2024. So having the new roof put on, we did some pointing work. So a lot of that heavy lifting was done before then, that's a good story. Again, continuing to foster relationships with other facilities. Museum operations, as I spoke about in the previous presentation, we still have a museum to run until at least the end of 2027. So it's continuing to build on a lot of the good work that staff and volunteers have done over the last 4 or 5 years with the museum, and leave it in a spot that it is, in the best case scenario in terms of passing along the ownership of the collection. Preservation of the history of the mill. So what we'd like to do is tell the story of it going from the Bears to the Mackenzies to the Leaves to us and eventually on to Mississippi Mills. It's a great story of, give or take, it'll be coming up on 200 years of history. And even just looking at it from an exhibit, and you can picture placing panels in the gatehouse and telling the specific stories as you go along to preserve the history of that property and of that museum. And also, again, it's a focus on the capital plan and ensuring that we're keeping up with our capital works with the museum and with the gatehouse. So steps that we've had since the policy planning meeting, a couple weeks ago. So we reviewed the comments from the Mill Detail Advisory Committee, as well as Mississippi Mills. We amended the plan. We did submit, as I said, we submitted the draft plan as as part of the original submission for our CMOG application. And then, hopefully once this board, the board approves the plan, we will submit the final update to CMOG. And that will hopefully close up our application for this year, and we'll be off to the races. With that,
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Scott? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Resolved that the board of directors approve the updated Bill of Contail Museum strategic plan. I need someone to move that. Viv. Seconder, Mary Lou. All in favor? Carried. Item 10, reviews and revisions of MVCA's regulatory matters. No presentation. Any questions regarding that? Okay. Item 11, do you want to report? Casey, or is it just any questions?
Hi there.
If you, oh no, you have a presentation for us.
Try and keep it quick. Overall, everything is on track to the end of March. Category 1, we're at about 24% of expenses. Category 2, 3, and capital, we're under 15%. That's normal for that time of year. The bulk of the expenses and the work happen in the spring, summer, and fall. We have had a very successful year. Student grants, yay! Canada Summer Jobs, we applied for 11 positions, we received funding for 3. Young Canada Works, Heritage Career Intern, we applied and received 11K for the assistant curator. And Eco Canada, once we knew we didn't get some of the Canada Summer Jobs, we applied there. And we received funding for 2 of the engineering students, which got 11K and about 2.5K towards one of our monitoring students. That monitoring student, half of their season gets covered by OFA because OFA successfully gets the Canada Summer Jobs for that position. So we overall got about 38,000 towards the student grants. Obviously, you heard a little bit on the WECI. We applied for Widow Lake Dam DSR, the Bennett Lake Dam DSR, and land survey work to be done in both dams. We were looking for about 125K contribution. Didn't get any of that. So we are consolidating and just focusing on getting Widow Lake Dam DSR done, plus the land surveys, because they need to happen from a legal perspective. It needs an order. On cash, we applied for just over 102,000 in funding. We got 59K. There is potential on that one, and even possibly some of the others next January. They usually will open up if they have surplus funds, and we have possibly get some of that back. So we keep that in mind. We are starting the process with the City of Ottawa to negotiate that loan, and part of it, if you're not getting some of the WECI funding, we may have to follow. But for this year, it'll be pulling from reserves as we go through. And the water sewer here, there's been delays in getting that agreement with the municipality on cost sharing and the contractor. So given where we are in the year, we've kind of said that's not happening this year. We will probably tender in the winter and hopefully get shovels in the ground next spring. We actually get an agreement, so that's been pulled out of the plan. And moving on to summaries of category 1. The only update in projections there is receiving 5,700 additional on student grants, so using hopefully a little less reserves. Category 2, there's no update to the projections. And on category 3, There's an additional stewardship program, which was the Fred Mighty control fund. That's also allowing us to have a student tier, additional student tier for the summer that's being funded. And most of the student grants that we received were for category 3, so we received some extra revenue there, and likely assuming things keep on track, that they'll be able to put some of their money into their reserve funds. And capital, as noted above, both the WECI and the water control structure is on track there, and no changes.
Thank you, Stacy. Have to check that. Any questions or comments for us?
Did we get any student funding this year? We got the Young Canada Works funding for the assistant curator for Gwen. Okay. It's actually a bit of a longer program. They call it an internship, not just a summer job.
Okay. Right, any other comments or questions?
Okay,
Sally,
so,
you want to say something?
yeah, as Stacy was talking, it made me realize something that I found out after I did my GM update. And it relates to the water and sewer line. So I had a call late last week from the CAO at the Town Carlton place. And as many of you will be familiar, when a developer develops a subdivision or puts in, infrastructure that's eventually to be assumed by the municipality, there's a process that's followed for that eventual transfer and assumption of that infrastructure. And I guess it came to light that the town, its protocols would be that it has no intention of taking ownership of that water and sewer line that we're proposing to connect to for some time. That subdivision is to be fully built out before the town is going to take assumption of that water and sewer line. The implication for us is that we need to become party to the agreement with Kavanaugh that the municipality's been negotiating for us to proceed with that work. We had been working under the assumption to date that we already have an agreement with the town, and we would be paying our money to the town, and they would give us a permit to connect to the infrastructure. They've realized now, well, actually, they're not going to assume the ownership of that infrastructure for some time. If we want to connect to it, we need to become a party to this agreement and basically agree with Kavanaugh that we can connect to their infrastructure and still go through the municipal permitting process to make sure the design requirements are met with the municipality. So it's a wrinkle in this process that ideally we would have found out a year or more ago, candidly, but where the good news is, to the best of our understanding, the terms are agreed upon on who's paying what to whom. So that's the key part of the agreement, is figuring out, the money aspect. But now we're going to have to retain legal counsel to look at the draft agreement that the town had entered into or was proposing to enter into with Kavanaugh, and integrate our interests into that agreement before it can be executed. So we're so close. We're so close. I actually, this development is not an insurmountable hurdle. I think we'll get there, and I think we'll get this built next year.
All right, thanks for that update. Any questions? Comments regarding that? Seeing none, I'll move to the adjournment. Resolved that the Board of Directors meeting be adjourned. It's going to do that. Cindy. Yeah. Second that. Meaning. All in favor? There. Thank you very much, everyone. Are you